The same is true of science and its attitude to the mysteries of the universe. J.B.S. Haldane, the great British scientist and polymath, said, "Now my own suspicion is that the universe is not only queerer than we suppose, but queerer than we can suppose. I suspect that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of or can be dreamed of in any philosophy." Richard Feynman compared the accuracy of quantum theory's experimental predictions to specifying the width of North America to within 1 hair's breadth. This means quantum theory has got to be true in some sense. The predictions are so fantastically accurate. Yet the assumptions that quantum theory needs to make in order to deliver those predictions are so mysterious that even Feynman himself was moved to remark, "If you think you understand quantum theory, you don't understand quantum theory." David Deutsch, in this splendid book, The Fabric of Reality, resorts to, and I think resort is the right word, the many worlds interpretation of quantum theory, because the worst you can say of that is that it's preposterously wasteful. It postulates a vast and rapidly growing number of universes existing in parallel, mutually undetectable, except through the narrow porthole of quantum mechanical experiments. These universes all differ in slight ways. In some of these universes, I'm already dead. In a minority of them, I have a green beard, and so on. The alternative Copenhagen interpretation is equally preposterous. The human mind was not evolved to understand these things, yet the predictions indicate that in some sense they are true. Science is humble enough to recognize that the universe is queerer than we can suppose. What is it that makes us capable of supposing anything? And does this tell us anything about what we can suppose? Are there things about the universe that will be forever beyond our grasp, but not beyond the grasp of some superior intelligence, some superior superhuman intelligence? Or are there things about the universe that are in principle ungraspable by any mind, however superior? The history of science has been a long series of violent brainstorms as successive generations have come to terms with increasing levels of queerness in the universe. We're now so used to the idea that the Earth spins rather than the sun moving across the sky, it's hard for us to realize what a shattering mental revolution that must have been. After all, it seems so obvious that the Earth is large and motionless, the sun small and mobile. Although it's worth recalling what Wittgenstein said on the subject. Wittgenstein asked a friend of his, "Why do people always say it was natural for man to assume that the sun went round the Earth rather than that the Earth was rotating?" His friend replied, "Well, obviously because it looks as though the sun is going round the Earth." Wittgenstein responded, "Well, what would it have looked like if it had looked as though the Earth was rotating?" Science has taught us many things against our intuition. Apparently solid things like crystals and rocks are really almost entirely empty space. The familiar illustration is a fly in the middle of a sports stadium. The atom, the nucleus of the atom is the fly in the middle of the sports stadium, and the next nucleus is the next fly in the middle of the next sports stadium. The hardest, solidest, densest rock is, quote, really almost entirely empty space, broken only by tiny particles so widely spaced they shouldn't count. Why then do rocks look and feel solid and hard and impenetrable? Well, as an evolutionary biologist, I'd say something like this. Our brains have evolved to help us survive within the orders of magnitude of size and speed at which our bodies normally operate. We never evolved to navigate in the world of atoms. If we had, our brains probably would perceive rocks as full of empty space. Rocks feel hard and impenetrable to our hands because our hands themselves can't penetrate them. It's therefore useful to our brains to construct notions like solidity and impenetrability. Moving to the other end of the scale, our ancestors never had to navigate through the cosmos at anything like the speed of light. If they had, our brains would be much better at coping with Einstein relativity. I give the name middle world to the medium-scaled environment, with things moving at medium speeds, in which we have evolved, in which our brains have evolved, the ability to understand and take action. Steve Grand, he's the one on the left, Douglas Adams is on the right. In Steve Grand's book, Creation, Life and How to Make It, he is almost scathing with our mundane preoccupation with matter itself. We have this tendency to think that only solid material things really are things at all. Waves of electromagnetic fluctuation in a vacuum seem unreal, and to the Victorians they seem so unreal that they had to be waves in some material medium, so the Victorians invented the ether to cope with that. A whirlpool, for Steve Grand, is a thing with just as much reality as a rock, even though a whirlpool only has its shape because of motion. That's a similar effect. That's a sand dune in Tanzania, which moves, which walks at about 17 meters per year, but it retains its shape because the wind blows the dust in that form. Another quotation from Steve Grand. He says, think of an experience from your childhood, something you remember clearly, something you can see, feel, maybe even smell, as if you were really there. After all, you really were there at the time, weren't you? How else would you remember it? But here is the bombshell. You weren't there. Not a single atom that is in your body today was there when that event took place. Matter flows from place to place and momentarily comes together to be you. Whatever you are, therefore, you are not the stuff of which you are made. If that doesn't make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, read it again until it does, because it is important. We are evolved denizens of middle world, and that limits what we are capable of imagining. We find it intuitively easy to grasp ideas like when a rabbit moves at the sort of medium velocity at which rabbits and other middle world objects do move, and hits another solid middle world object, it knocks itself out.